Hey there, Vernacular Faithful, and Redcoat here. And I've got another instruction booklet that I wanted to go through with you guys. So, uh, you know, what I would love to go through is the instruction booklet for Soul Calibur 2. And I might have that buried in here somewhere, but I'm not sure. I just kind of dug up a couple of them and said, okay, we'll choose this one and this one. So today, I wanted to go over Soul Calibur 3's booklet. So immediately we can see something unique about this one when compared to the Mario All Stars book, which I think I still got that here, which I showed you last time. Like, just look at the backs. Very different, very different. And that's indicative of the era and also indicative of the group that's making it. So this is a Namco title, firstly. And this was also, let me see, where's the date here? All rights reserved. That's the nice thing about these is, well, at least I hope that's going to be the nice thing about these is that they're going to have some sort of log of when this came out. Uh, and I am, yes. Let's see. Na, 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 na. Who to call when your thing breaks? Hmm. Live counselors available from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. NamcoReg.com. I don't think I ever called that. I have to wonder how many people use that. Hmm. Does this actually say when this was made? Here we are. Although it's the licensing for the advertisement on the back. 2005, so copyright 2005. So that sounds about right. And it's Urban Rain on the back. Yeah, and they had Tekken characters featured in that. It was when the brawlers were starting to realize that they don't have to be 2D, they could actually go 3D and do everything that they were trying to do. Anyway, so yeah, already just from the front of this, there's a lot more going on here. And this was before, if this was before they started realizing that most people don't read these. Um, and I think it was also just kind of industry tradition that they were following, and so they just made it very beautiful and very nice. And of course, as it's Soul Calibur 3, the new main villain is Salamel, but because Nightmare was such an iconic villain in Soul Calibur 2, they wanted to keep him around and be like, hey, 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 no, we haven't lost him. He's still here, which I've already talked about my compunctions with regards to them not ponying up and just saying, okay, we're done with him, we're moving on to the next. But that's another query. And that gets into a whole other talk about literary structure and what type of story Soul Calibur actually is from that standpoint. But I digress. Let's go ahead and open this guy up. So immediately, one of the things that we can see here, and this is just kind of in a difference of approach. When we looked at the Mario game, there was a lot less going on in the booklet. And this one, I think a part of it is the tone, but it's also just a difference in approach. Also, this is a booklet for a fighting game. So immediately you have a different audience that you're speaking to. Like with the Mario game, you're speaking to an audience that they came here for a good time. They're they just want to kind of get into the game as quickly as possible. If they were looking at it for information, then they want to get it as quickly as possible. They don't really need to know the individual nuances between it. But at the same time, again, that book was also entertainment in of itself, just all of the funny little pictures. Now for this one, there's still this sleek professional veneer to it, and it also follows with the tone of Soul Calibur. It's legends, paragons, and how would I say, uh, paragons of performance, people who are at the top of their game. Like it's kind of implied that all of these characters are just virtuosos of whatever style of combat that they're utilizing, even if it's something that they taught themselves. And that's kind of that sort of professional chicness is reverberates throughout this, where there's still this idea of these are best in class characters. That's why it's marble up top here, so to speak. And I mean, again, it also comes to, since these are best in class characters, we must have best in class presentation. And so we have a very realistic representations of the characters, the outfits that they wear. While in this one, I still feel like they were able to toe the line between, um, oh yeah, character creation. That was the thing. I made a bunch of characters in this game. They were able to toe the line between fantasticalness and practical realism. There was a there was a there was a nice line that they managed to hit both in Soul Calibur 2 and Soul Calibur 1 and to Soul Calibur 3. And I mean, you can see it kind of moving away from that in specifically our friend Tira here, who was not on the front of the box for whatever reason, but she was a cool character. She was we wouldn't fully realize everything about who she was until later, as far as and when I say who she was, I don't mean necessarily narratively, because I mean that was the point was she was mysterious. What I mean is, as a functional character, her identity, as far as what you do as her, was a little bit underdeveloped. But this is another thing, and I'm not sure if you caught this with each page turn. Something unique to this: each page has a different character on it, which again leans into this idea. This is a game where you choose who your main character is. You choose who the main character is. No one is the main character. Rather, the main character is actually, if we're really thinking about it, the main character is Soul Edge, which, if you notice on every page, there's Soul Calibur in Siegfried's form, and there's Soul Edge in the form that it takes in this game. And so on every page, you got Sumina. Could she wield Soul Calibur? And you've got Killick. Could he wield Soul Edge? Which is interesting that he's on that page. I don't know if they actually chose that on purpose. I mean, Shang Fua being on the same page as Soul Calibur, that makes sense. Also, her being at the end of the book, that's interesting. Um, but yeah, Killick right there. And it's noted in the story, like Killick actually gets corrupted at the very beginning of Soul Calibur 2, and he's basically on a journey of redemption. And then, Maxi, Quest for Vengeance, he's on the side of the Soul Calibur, on the Soul Edge. Talum, bright, happy, peppy character following the wind, trying to do what's right. Maybe a bit young to be fighting. She's on the Soul Calibur side. Now, they don't always do that, but it's interesting when they actually manage to do that. I don't think that was something they were thinking about because, like here, Tira is on the Soul Calibur side, and she's like, no, no, just no. Um, but yeah, so they don't always make that distinction. Like here, I think they should have swapped those two. Taki should be on the Soul Calibur side, and Voldo should be on the Nightmare side. But that just wasn't a thing that they were thinking about. Just the idea of having the characters in the upper corners, though, is just really cool. And that's the thing. Like the fact that they didn't really think about that, that kind of points towards the functionality of this book. Like it's at the end of the day, its intended functionality wasn't necessarily to grow and expand your interaction with this thing. It was really just to inform you. And the nice veneers in it, it's because it's it needs to be nice. Like if you got just a black and white thing, which don't worry, I will get to a couple of instruction booklets that are just black and white. Um, the Genesis, uh, the Genesis set, almost all of those ones are black and white. Um, but this makes it feel a little bit nicer when you open up and it's like, oh, hey, here's the instruction manual. And you put it to the side and you put the thing in there. And you probably only look at the front, if I'm honest. But anyway, so that's the Soul Calibur 3 instruction manual. And, immediately we see some interesting stuff with regards to the stylistics of it. It's a lot, it's a little bit sleeker. And again, it's very word dense and less image dense, um, for better or for worse. And again, that comes back to the audience that it's courting. It's courting a fighting game audience, people who are willing to open up a thesaurus or a dictionary of fighting game terms and just eat them for weeks before going ahead and going into the training room and then choosing a character and eating years and years of information, consuming years and years of information in the course of like 2 months from other players while trying to learn their character before then getting into the space and fighting. Like, that's who this book was for. Now, I will also say this whole every time I show the back of it, it's like this little advertisement on the back, and that's a thing from that time, that era, because it comes back to you got to make money, and you're like, well, okay, how are we going to fund this? Well, we already made this deal with Urban Rain because again, um, they got a Tekken character in this. It was Law and Paul are both in this game. We made this deal with them, so let's make good on it and put it on the back. We'll do some advertising for them. People will find out about this when they read the manual and da 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 da. It says something about the way that you could do advertisement in our modern era, where, let's say you're an independent guy and you don't have the thrust of a publisher. Well, setting yourself up so that someone else through some element of their paraphernalia references you, or, heaven forbid, if they had an instruction manual. Again, I'm not saying make these. You don't have to. But if they had one, here you are. Um, and I mean, it could even be something as simple as, let's say you have a game that has an extra dimensional character that just goes from place to place to place to place. And if lore, it makes lore sense for them to show up in different things. And you're just like, well, maybe they'll show up in the tutorial for this one. They're inconsequential to the story, but they appear just briefly enough to say, hey, da 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 da. I'm from a different land. But I digress. I know that it's kind of a weird thing to say because at the same time, we have all of this crossover stuff happening where people are thinking more about the greater universe than the individual story that they're telling and losing their path because of that. And I would, counsel some thought there where it really just focus on the story you're telling. And if it feels like there's more to be told, or it feels like someone else's story coming in with yours will bring out more, then yes, absolutely. Bring them together because that's like really cool. Like that would be Soul Eater crossing over with Bleach. Like those are two stories that could really benefit from each other. Um, yes, I did write a fanfic about that. Anyway, um, I digress. That's a thing when considering crossovers and all that. But I digress. Actually, I suppose that's another thing. I don't think Soul Calibur 3 actually had a guest character. No, it didn't. The Soul Calibur 2 did. Soul Calibur 3 didn't. And then Soul Calibur 4 had Darth Vader. Yeah. There's a way to do that, right? At least in my opinion. Having him actually bring a lightsaber to a sword fight doesn't make sense to me. um, I think if you really wanted to do that right, I think it would be better to fully bring him into the universe. as a character. Uh, you know, I mean, that'd be really tough because he's got all the breathing apparatus and everything. But at that time, they'd already done the Anakin Skywalker stuff and all of that jazz. So, um, say something about the fact that he has to protect his kyber crystal and whatever, so he can't use it. Um, Something about the Force being a little bit diminished, maybe. I mean, it's just he's a tough character to integrate into the space. Um, but yeah, on the surface of it, just saying he's there, that's a blunt and terrible way, at least in my opinion, to integrate a Star Wars character into a low fantasy into a low fantasy historical setting. It just breaks so many things. Like I would have preferred it if it was kind of a thing of you have this character who you because the armor of Darth Vader is stylized after samurai. Like that's a thing. That's in the genesis of the armor. It's stylized after samurai, and I think there's elements of the Nazi memorabilia in there as well because the Empire were ultimately space Nazis. Um, and a couple of other things that kind of come together to make that new feel. So having a character who you take the gestalt of what Darth Vader's armor was, and then you have that on a character that appears in the universe, and he has um, you don't even use the Darth, just call him Vader, and there's this feeling like everyone says we don't know where he came from. He's kind of ridiculous, and everyone's afraid of him. He doesn't use the lightsaber, but he's got a red blade. Um, and you could even say that that's connected to the Soul Edge in some way. And the Force is a little more limited in actually, I take that back. The usage of the Force, the way that they did it in there was kind of cool. Um, still think it's kind of I still think it's kind of a step too far, but it's a part of the character, so I don't think you could get rid of that. But making it this kind of mystery where it's like this guy appeared and we're not quite sure what's going on with him, but he seems kind of ridiculous. And it's like he's integrated into the world, like essentially Vader is living in the world as though it was normal. Um, Kind of a thing. Like there's a Vader type character, and so it's kind of a nod, but it doesn't break things. Um, but that's kind of the way that I would do it. But again, it's like crossovers are always tricky. It's either you do the open the portal, and now we have to explain how all of their rules work or don't work, what rules they bring in with them, and what rules they don't, or or we integrate the histories, which has a whole other different thing. Because I think to what is it, Devilman and Cyborg 009 crossing over. And the problem is that you cross anything over with Devilman and you doom the other universe because in Devilman's universe, their world is cursed. God hates their world and kills it. Uh, Uh, and so you cross them over with any other world and you say that the Devil Man world is the world, then, oh, everyone else is damned. And it's just, oh, it just does so many things to their lore. Anyway, I digress. I went off on a long tangent there. But yeah, Soul Calibur 3's instruction manual. This one's in actually decent condition. I didn't expect that. So I've got one more I'm going to go over today. Uh, I'll record a separate video for it. And yeah, this has been Redcoat. Play the games you want to play, boyos. Signing off.